I tried to, and she put me some daily care institution, that she can be able to support me and pay for the care.
What do you remember of Jewish life in Warsaw? What was the Jewish community like?
It happens that I was born in Jewish section and I was educated in Jewish section, and we live like in a big city, but most of the were Jewish people, and I think that we felt quite comfortable being together, and was very rich life because we have, as I said, regular education regarding to requirement of the government, and then beside that was a very large Jewish education, school, folk school, and preschool, everything was, and public school also was only mostly, I would say, only for Jewish children. The basic education in public school like that, and teachers were Jewish. Maybe few of them were not Jewish, and also the principal was Jewish. And then we have religious. We study, I would say, some kinds Bible, as I remember, in the school, because there was a special seminary for a teacher who taught the Bible. It was secular, not religious, special. They were not, but secular, and was in Polish language also. And then was also high school. Was also, most of them were private school, owned by Jewish people. And also the same day we have general education required by high school, and beside that we study history of Jewish, the mid-view history of Jewish, progressively as we started.
Can you describe the relations between the Jews and the non-Jews in Warsaw, how they got along?
I was, as I said, I was in Jewish, it was like not a ghetto, but it was a Jewish, large, very Jewish section. How many people were living there? No, I don't know, but it was a very large, and streets were very crowded always, and we lived together with our own life, and some of them, if they have to go but most of them didn't even leave the section because they were afraid to leave, and our life was absolutely full. We have movie, theaters, everything. There was even no need. Even if somebody got in, not every time was too pleasant, because especially in that time when the anti-Semitism grew up, because of this. Closer to the war, it got you could feel much more the anti-Semitism.
Before the war, what anti-Semitism did you experience, if any?
By myself, once, I was put down during the winter time, was muggy, because the snow was melting and there was little rain, and anyway, some, a good lamb, how we can say, passed by, and he taught me, screaming something anti-Semitic. That's what I heard. Then at school I didn't feel it because I was among the Jewish children, and the same later. And that personally I didn't feel too much, but I knew that I cannot go further because I will be not welcome in another section. Could happen something, that somebody, again, that was in Jewish section. He went, the young boy was just in the Jewish section, but if I would go further, I was afraid to go. Mostly, we are not ready for that.
What was the feeling of the community in Warsaw in the early days of Hitler, in the early 30s? Was there fear?
Sure, was terrible fear, but always was hope because nobody could predict it, who could happen to us. But knowing what happened in Germany with bidding, with burning their businesses and auto da fe, and all this news, we got the news, because we have a very large Jewish press and many daily newspaper were issued, and also in Polish language was like Nasz Przegląd, was very respectful newspaper, and we got all the news what was going on in Germany when Hitler came. We were very well orientated society. Jewish society was very well orientated with situation, but we thought that probably we will be in ghetto, but we can stay together. Nobody had even in mind that we can be murder in mass, that will be a mass murder.
What are your first memories of the war? Where were you at the time?
Oh, I was, I can say, affected by the war, I think, from the first minute. Because first of all, I was in nursing school when we hear that the war broke out. We still didn't believe. I was in dormitory because all nurses has to stay in dormitory. And we even saw the airplane fighting and fire coming from the airplane, but we thought that this is only military exercise. We couldn't believe it. But in the first day, we got already this section. This section was little out of the Jewish section far, but we were in school and we didn't feel so much. And we got already wounded people in the hospital, and we have to get up during the night, give them help. And that was the first, and we saw already the first building completely level in this section. Then we got, and after a few weeks of this, we dispersed. The director of the school want us to disperse to our house, our home, and so. And I stay with my mother. And then was the bombing for a while was little quiet before they make the very heavy bomb. No, that was already after the heavy bombing when they came with carpet flies with the airplane, with the war airplane, and it was it was terrible feeling. First of all, we were completely helpless because they start to bomb inhabitant area when the people were living, and the building were completely crushed, so many wounded, killed, and we live in fear. Then was no water, no light, and no food available, but we have to go, stay in line whenever we heard, and the same, I with my mother have to stay in the line to get some food to eat, and just the day and night was terrible because we didn't have any minute of calm. I would say, that they didn't bomb it. And then we decided, my mother was working at the same hospital when I have nursing practice. And we decided when it started to be quiet, we wanted to go back to hospital and do our work, our work. And we heard that the hospital was bombed also, and they need help, and we went there. And during going there, my mother was killed, and I was wounded very heavily, my arm and my leg. And then they took me to hospital. My mother was killed on the spot, but I didn't even realize because I was in shock, bleeding heavily. And then, you know, I couldn't realize. I thought that I am in the movie. That something's not really happened to me. But somebody caught me and they tried to give me the first help. And they put me in Sun Spirit hospital, which was close to this area, and they bombed this hospital. And they leveled this hospital completely. You know, the floor where I witnessed this. The floor was falling one through the others. There was only one gray dust with blood and terrible screaming. I don't know how, but I got out from the hospital, though I was wounded. And understanding when I got out, they trying to kill me from the plane. The plane was peeking down, and from a regular, I don't know if I forgot, a rifle, they shoot, and also they bomb with a flaming, with a burning bomb, which was small. Okay, and that's how in one half naked, because I had the whole hand with the first dressing put on, and I couldn't get out, and they tried to, and then I got a lot of problem later because till I got to the hospital took days. From one sanitary point to another, in some hospital without water, without help, anything. And finally, my family, my aunt learned about mine because it was already the divorce. It was or how you say they stopped anyway. This oh, they put the arm down, or how you say, I forgot right now this word. How you say? My husband is needed here, to explain, to help. Okay, you know what? Where they want to, the bombing stop, and the German took over till the things, the whole bombing stop, and the German took over Warsaw.
Do you remember the first time you actually saw German soldiers in the streets?
The first time Germans in hospital, when I was lying in hospital, I saw even a German priest. Because, in that time they put, I was, my aunt put me, through the gravels, through the ruins. She was dragging me up to the hospital. It was a far way. And because they knew me there, they took very good care of me. They tried to help me right away. And they put me in, when I got my bed and the first help, and that was a hospital for children. But it was so many people were wounded that they put the elderly people also there. They were laying on the floor and screaming, yelling, because we didn't have, that was not enough medication, not enough help. So the doctor were mobilized and they didn't come back. It was a terrible situation.
So you remember seeing the first Germans in the
Yes,
hospital?
they came to hospital and and they were Jewish and non-Jewish people. And the priest came to ask if somebody wanted to make a confession with with the band of SS or something like that. And and the German were coming, looking here. This was everybody was scared.
Were they looking for Jewish patients at that time?
At that time, not, because with such that was the first day after it was the suspension of the arm. That's what you say, or the suspension of the arm. I don't know if this is the right word. Anyway.
Tell me, under what circumstances was the Warsaw Ghetto created? Do you remember the day?
Oh yes, I was in hospital. Exactly, they put some, posters, and they organized and the Jewish community was got all those orders, and they start to organize somehow the ghetto, and then and was saying that this is the street. It's danger on the because of sickness, other things is that dangerous street. Nobody can pass the non-Jewish cannot pass by the street. And then I was in that time in hospital. And first thing what I got, because I wanted to join to my family, my mother was, it was after 6 months when I was in hospital. Still, I was still in the cast and still sick, but the things happened like that. There was no personal in that, and I started to work in this condition with one hand, just and help the people because there was no nursing staff. I was on this floor almost once, and I was among the children, and with their help, we started to organize little the work, and I was doing some nursing performance, giving injection, and
In the ghetto.
It still was not completely ghetto. It was only the Strefstadt, but because this hospital did belong to the first big ghetto, and they didn't move. But what they did, they moved. It was a big Jewish hospital in Chiste, when was 11,025 beds, and they removed and they took over the hospital, and they transfer all Jewish people to small, much smaller places, not ready, not organized as a hospitals, but they have to organize by themselves how much they could take it from the big hospital, from the hospital from Chiste, and then they put together. It was terrible back and forth transfer of the very sick, wounded people, and with terrible condition because there was they couldn't even make any give them any treatment in this condition because it was steady organizing transfer from one place to another, and that was through all the ghetto from the very beginning.
Let's talk about the conditions in the ghetto. What were the facilities like? The food? What was a typical day like?
Oh, terrible, First of all, was lack of food. They put people from Germany. They brought the people from Germany, from Czechoslovakia, through the Zabrze, I think, so, or something like that, and they put them in big Jewish community, and then from all the small villages, they brought everything towards the ghetto was terrible, overcrowded. It was impossible, crowded, and when the sanitary condition was terrible, completely anti-sanitary condition, because people, they were family living in one room without beds, without even supply of water, and sure, that's understanding that they got sick, and the children were terrible, and there was not enough food because even the Jewish community couldn't prepare so much food, and deliver from outside was very limited. We got right away, there was a so-called boni for bread, for other food. Hospital got, regarding hospital, they still got because of work of joint who supplied both hospitals as much they could with food and with milk for children. Hospital for a while had some things, enough food. Then they also Jewish community supply. The soup was terrible, but we ate everything, what could. I just remember how was that I had this portion in hospital, this portion of food, one not happen one like casserole, one dish of soup, I have to added water to have for 3 times, and that was my daily food, and my daily meals. And and
Hold on one second.
okay.
Stop for a tape change.
We were gonna change it.
We're okay, go ahead.
Who ran the ghetto? Who was in charge?
In charge exactly was the Judenrat. In charge, but they have to give their weekly report every time to German authority, so authorities, okay, and they have they were under the Judenrat work under German pressure. That was terrible. But in my point of view, I think that they did, beside that they have to fill up their orders, they were obligated, but they are trying really the best what they could to organize the Jewish life in under these circumstances, because it was just terrible, it was completely one chaos, one miserable, I can tell you, I had the feeling that we are rats, I had the feeling that we are rats in a sinking boat, It was just terrible panic, always panic, terrible. And beside that, and we know that they are trying to treat us terribly and with fear. Right away, even putting my first step outside from the hospital when I was when I recovered already from my wound, was to put the band with the Magen David, with the Star of David, and that was already, you felt right away that you are something different, that you start to be yourself, that you are, it was terrible fear around, panic, fear, very unexpressible feeling, I can tell you. And then there are so many people, children without parents, right away after bombing, because there's so many orphan. They organized a very good orphanage, but and there still was Dr. Korczak orphanage there, and other smaller things. They trying to help the children as much they could, but the disease, couldn't be avoided. The tuberculosis was spread all over, and the hunger. It's terrible things, hunger of the kids,
How did the Jews in the ghetto react to all of this? Did they give up?
No, I think they fight every day for for living and to keep themselves as a human being, with all the respect for themselves. I think so. That the prayer didn't stop. They got together. I know that they was in rooms, when they could pray, when they could get together. They start to organize their living, even each, because it was martial law, and we couldn't walk after the 8 o'clock. And also, and anyway, the movement was very limited. First of all, they put the assessment were walking on the street, and sometimes without reason they start to shoot. I remember in the ghetto when they put already from the big ghetto to the smaller ghetto, there were 2 assessments, and they were killing, because I undercounted them once. And they, for no reason, they just shoot whoever they saw on the street. And we have to go to buy some things to go back for if you were working, even to go back to your room or to your place or to your corner where you when you have to sleep. And they were killing just for nothing, like that. And I under conscience, I know that in a minute I will be killed, but because they were riding their bicycle on the walk side. But I didn't get out from the walk side because I knew that I will be killed as soon, but at least with some face, I didn't give up. And I went straight to them, and they got out from the sidewalk.
What about resistance? Did the Jews, even before the ghetto uprising, resist?
I think it was first of all was resistant because I was very much involved in hospital life because we even live in the hospital, and I think the spirit was our spirit was a big resistance. That's one that we didn't give up. We were trying to put everything together, and the hospital was working as should go. And the same you see businesses they start to making businesses in the first. Period of the big ghetto, they were restaurants, even some of them, and other kind of business. They're trying to do everything, and then was selling. People who got some belongings they have to sell for bread, for something. So the exchange was big. They trying as much they could to survive.
What about the underground?
And the underground, I heard about underground in the second. I know about first of all the first big fight of underground was in the Schultz, how they work shops. How I don't remember. The fabric when they under German ordinance, and they were, the forced labor. There, the Jews were working then, and once the German in a big how transfer car, how you can say, truck, there were many German in the big truck, and they put the first bump on it, and the 30 German were killed. That was we saw. Then they started after when they learned about Treblinka, they spread the letters that don't give up, don't go voluntary there because the people were burned there, and they got, we got the it gets out from my mind, the paper which words get out from my mind,
Before that, didn't the Jews know what was in store for them? Didn't they get news
No,
from the outside world?
we had the hope that they will send us to labor work, but we can survive, we can manage, and we have always there was the expectation that we can that we survive. We are not completely desperate because in desperation it's easier to fight, and it's not so easy when you have the hope that will be a way to live through, and I think that was the fight in my point of view. But later on, when we saw that they want to kill us over there, then they start to organize. And I heard because I met few who told me that they are organizing, but the things was that they didn't let everybody go to the residence movement, because if somebody was without arm, without the revolver, or how you say, revolver, yes, without revolver or any kind of weapon, they didn't have no advantage from this one. Everybody who get the weapon, I was willing, they could get, but it was very hard to get the weapon. From where? We never used the weapon in Jewish ghetto. We never had the weapons, any. There was nothing. And that's what they start with the Molotov battle, and
Did you get any help from the non-Jewish residents of Warsaw? Did they try to smuggle weapons?
I was not involved in, I knew about, I have friends, matter of fact, I knew very well Marek Edelman, because he was working in hospital in that time when was already organized, the underground movement. I have a friend, another, and I know even women who was my teacher, and she was in the bunker on Mila 18, together with her son, who was in the, his name was Lutek Rotblat, and her name was Maria Rotblat. And he got to, when they were surrounded, came to them that that he have to kill his mother and then himself.
You were in Warsaw during the revolt?
Yes, I was during I was arrested at the end of the April because I ran away from the burning hospital. I was in hospital when and we saw Marek, and they told us that the uprising started and to go to bunker or something like that, and they will fight to the last minute, and we have hope.
And afterwards you were deported?
And then they arrested me from the burning hospital because they burned. That was not the first time. The first time when the assessment went into to the hospital, they killed all people who were on the wards. And we came back from the. They didn't arrest us in that time. The first time, the nurses and the staff, but who didn't but most of them hiding themselves. It happened that I was on night duty when was the so-called that was in January '43 when they came when the assessment, many of them came to the hospital. They surrounded the hospital and they started to kill whoever was there. And they put us on the hospital court, the courtyard, and they make selection. I didn't get out from the floor. I was on the ward with the children. I didn't get up because I saw that the Jewish police tried to drag them like that, and the German the same. And I was the same, and I told him, let me at least put something on them. Don't wrap them. Make them comfortable. And I tried to not give them, the children. But I took one child, and I took with myself. They took out the child, because I told them, I will put the child, but don't scare them. Let them give at least few minutes of. They took out the children and they sent me to the courtyard, and then they make selection. And during the selection, the German, I don't know, for some reason, he took me out. I was even not oriented where I am going, but the Jewish policeman told me to run out because that he can change the mind, because I thought that I am selected, I didn't know what to do with myself. First of all, run away or not run away, I didn't know it, but he told me to get out, and I got out. That was the first time. But when the uprising was already, we were already preparing hospital, special, in the basement, in the cellars. We prepare, we arrange so that we can stay for certain time, till the big fire. We didn't expect that they will bomb the hospital and they will burn. And they burned the hospital with the patient, with the staff, whoever was under them. And I ran away from burning hospital when we start to choke from the smoke, and we run away, and they start shoot after us. And a matter of fact, some of the